So today we're talking about agents. I think I've seen actually a few familiar faces and some other folks that have attended some of our UCaaS related webinars or CCaaS related webinars. We're talking specifically about agents, and really what we want to do is kind of level set on what does this really mean to our industry? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? How do we capitalize on the opportunities? How do we avoid the problems that may be associated with this as a business? So a couple of years ago, the executive team here at RingLogix, we met and we were trying to decide what AI really meant to us. There was obviously a lot of talk in the market, and there's a lot of different interpretations of AI, and we came to call it several ideas of really what this was going to mean. And we saw threats, we saw opportunities, and we saw risks. The risk being if we didn't do something that we were just going to be behind the curve, and that means all of our partners were not going to have what they need to be able to deliver to their customers. And then how is this going to impact their business was a primary consideration. So we decided it's significant enough for us to make a real effort. So we got a team together. That team focused on doing some discovery work, and the discovery work started with how do we go to market here? What should we go to market as, and what options do we have? So our first option was just to say, does it make sense for us to bring a platform here that we can integrate into our existing platforms and deliver something relatively quick and maybe a lot easier than the investments we ended up having to make? And the reason we decided to make the investments that we had to make is because the experience that we went through told us that much of this was not ready for prime time. And our experience was a lot of latency. I'm going to call it agents talking over the caller, and lack of extensibility into being able to do what we knew a customer was going to want to do. And you'll see what that means when we start to talk about tools and workflows. But we needed to have a path to be able to provide something that was more than just a receptionist, because the real value we were assessing was going to require that partners and ourselves deliver more solution-based services that goes well beyond just picking up a call, answering a call, and transferring to people. So we decided that the best course of action was to build it ourselves. And so we went down a path here of this over the last couple of years, and we've got a few months of runtime with some of our partners, and we're going to continue to evolve our product. But what I really wanted to express here is over the last few months, we've had a really great reception, really great experience, both at the partner level and the end customer level. And one of the reasons why is that we took the time to ensure that we had the very best components to be able to deliver the right solution. The very best components are going to be multimodal LLMs, audio native LLM. And the reason being is if you think about a call comes into an agent answers that call, and so it's handling the voice. Then in the traditional text pipeline method, that voice is converted to text and then given to the LLM. The LLM does its thing, it processes that and likely gives a audio output then that needs to be converted to the LLM then needs to give a text output that needs to be converted to audio. So through that process, you can introduce a lot of latency, potential errors, and it winds up with vocal cues and emotion and context being lost through that process. And so the example I like to give here is Jamie, who works on my team, sometimes will call me up and go, "What are you doing?" And sometimes she'll call me up and go, "What are you doing?" And those are two very different things. But when it translated to text, it's the same words, right? And the same meaning, or the meaning gets lost because all it is words. So what we look at is audio native LLM, multimodal with full VAT. So voice activity detection is a really key component here. And we've got a lot of background noise. And I've been in places where I've got 200 people around me and still able to have a conversation with the agent. The agent fully perceives the conversation and ignores the background noise. It also knows when I'm pausing to think, and when I've stopped thinking and when it's the agent's turn. So it allows for a more natural conversational experience. So when it's deployed to the customer, the customer's customer doesn't pick up the phone and go, "Oh yeah, I can tell that's a robotic agent." And so we created what we think is one of the best conversational experiences in the business. The other thing that we learned by, call it our own experiences, but also talking to a number of other people, and you'll find this all over social media too, by the way. One of the scariest things about voice AI agents is when the invoice comes. And what I mean by that is people start with this perception that there's a rate that they're paying. And then they find out later on when the invoice comes that there's all of these component extras that they weren't anticipating. And we're in the business of working with MSPs. I know from my background as being an MSP and from working with them that when surprise invoices arrive, they can't pass that along to the customers. So we needed to be able to kind of lock this in at a low rate, and specifically at a rate an SMB can afford to pay. And we'll talk a little bit about, what I mean by that here when we start to look at the cost savings that a company can get from a voice AI agent. So just to level set on a couple terms, because I'm going to reflect back on these. What does an agent need to do? They need to talk, right? Real conversations, not scripted stuff. So this means they need to understand the caller's intent, even when the intent is maybe not clear on the caller's part. They need to be able to ask follow-up questions, and they need to be able to respond in real time. And that is one of the key, call it experiences that needs to occur. But an agent to provide value to the customer needs to do a couple other things. One, they need to know things, right? And what do they need to know? It kind of depends on the role of the agent, but let's just say the hours of the business, kind of simple thing. Policies, maybe questions I need to ask under certain conditions. So if this condition exists, then this is the route that you're going to go. And then agents need to act. Acting is things like transferring a call, basic stuff. Receptionist agents do that. They do that just fine. A lot of times they do it at a very high cost, which doesn't always make sense to a particular customer because the value of actually just answering a call and transferring a call is equal to the value of a receptionist, right? And I think the tendency is to think it looks really cool and that it can do a lot more than it can. But when you really can deliver value, you're able to do things like create a ticket, log a lead in a CRM, book an appointment, or trigger maybe even more advanced workflows. And to be able to do that all during the conversation, right? That's a super important point here to make is this occur in real time. If I'm doing this over chat, the lag time is totally acceptable. But if I'm doing this over a conversation, it is not acceptable at all to have that kind of lag during an interactive conversation. So when we think about talking, knowing, and acting, these are really kind of the all things you would hire a person to do, right? If I hired a person to work in my tech support, they need to talk to people, they need to know a lot of things, and they need to take some actions, right? And so this is how agents not only deliver value, but they really address pains at the customer level. So pain could be something as simple as like, hey, we're all MSPs, right? And a number of our MSPs have started to deploy these into after hours agents so that when a call comes in after hours, they've got an answer, a clear path to potentially, escalating a ticket if or escalating a call if that particular call is critical, or maybe simply just logging a ticket and leaving it for a technician to answer in the morning, right? So that's one particular place. You also see in that, and I'm not going to read this slide, guys, but you'll get a copy of this. So, if you want to dig into this a little more, but in a healthcare, talked to a number of healthcare organizations where they've got a bunch of people at the front desk, or in some cases, you've seen like practice management now, they've consolidated into contact centers where they may have 30, 50 people who are answering phone calls and scheduling appointments or rescheduling appointments or confirming appointments, right? A lot of stuff that's traditionally called low value tasks that are highly resourced because they're important to the customer experience. So being able to do that kind of stuff with an agent is where we've seen, a number of, pains we can resolve, but also where there's really significant ROI. Property management is an interesting one. Again, tenants call 24/7, right? They may have a problem. Is that problem really a problem that needs to be escalated? Can it wait till tomorrow morning? Does this need to be addressed right now? And maybe there's some critical things like power outage that we need, right? So in concert with pains, there's this idea that we're automating things, right? And being able to talk, know, and take action puts us in this place where we are automating things that humans currently do. So this can be a really good thing if you can free your staff from repetitive calls. I'm going to use us as an example. Low-level tier 1 calls, right? People calling to reset passwords, those kinds of things. Low value transaction and low complexity, but high volume, right? So those kinds of things can be dealt with a lot faster and easier when there's an AI agent in the mix. So we take a situation here, and obviously, use cases depend much or very wildly dependent upon the customer environment we're talking about. But let's just take a 5-person sports center. We've got a fully loaded cost of $60,000 a year per agent, right? And it's pretty easy to suggest that 25 to 30% of tier 1 calls could be diverted to an AI agent to handle, leaving 60 per 70. So we're freeing up the capacity of those individuals, and that gets another 1.5 to maybe 1.25 people time, right? Full-time, FTEs in terms of the benefit. As purely a cost savings alone, that would equate to about $75,000 per year. But it depends on how you want to run your business. Are you trying to not make that next hire, right? Are you trying to bring your costs down and deliver the same or maybe even better level of service? So the idea here is that the agents are going to help increase the capacity for your team to do more. And it is quite possible that you're freeing up those people to do some things that are much more proactive and much more highly valued by the customers that you're servicing. So to provide value and to do the actions that agents need to do in order to provide the value, CRM, contact lookup, calendars, appointment scheduling, confirmations, ticketing, these all require actions in third-party systems, right? And we know that our customers have CRM investments and they have ticketing system investments, or they have investments in SMS and email, right? And so we don't want to displace any of that. We want to work in concert with those things. So our approach to this is I'm going to go from right to left on this slide. It's a little backwards, and I probably should have fixed this, but the open connectivity here is if you know about MCP servers, if you know about MCP, or you know about webhooks and APIs, that part's pretty easy because you've got a developer who likely understands exactly the kind of integration they're looking for, the payloads they're looking for, and they understand exactly how to make this work without a lot of significant effort. And then you have people who, in this market, I know a lot of people right now have been using NAN for a year, 2 years. So there's a lot of momentum within NAN. So being able to use a workflow tool like that or make.com, absolutely, a clean and easy way for people who know those tools, prefer to use those tools and want to use those tools. And then you've got things like we're bringing to market in probably about the next 15 days, so probably the week of July 13th, where we're releasing a whole bunch of one-click tools that are integrated into the platform. And a one-click tool would be when you're looking at creating your agent, you'd say, oh, I need HubSpot. I need to look up a contact in HubSpot. That's my tool. That's a one-click integration tool, easily callable by your agent. Maybe I also need another tool where that is going to look up a ticket. Maybe it's going to create a ticket, right? Those are all separate tools, and they're all broken out in such a way that they're usable to you once you've authenticated to your HubSpot or Calendly or Microsoft platforms, right? So there's a lot of tools we're going to be releasing over time. We're going to have a base set of maybe about a dozen tools right away, and then continue to release some over time here. So on the second piece of this, agents need to know things. Well, what do they need to know? They need to know about things that are relevant to their role. And why do they need to know that? Because agents can guess. If you give them a mission and they have to fill in the details, they do fill in the details. They come up with their own answers, right? They make things up. They drift from real grounded information. So with grounded knowledge, what we want to do here is create grounded knowledge that is sufficient for the agent to do its job without overloading it with a bunch of things that are not relevant to the job that they need to do. And this gives them the opportunity to be far more effective in their job, but it gives you the kind of peace of mind that an agent will deliver the right result or refer to the right thing, answer the right questions in the right way. So what that means in our world is the platform, you'd upload a PDF if that's where I'm going to call it your SOPs are, or a doc with your FAQs. You can even take a training doc and upload it. And URL crawls are interesting and nice to a degree. But I think a lot of the really pertinent stuff that an agent needs to be able to answer sits behind the public website, and it's really on, call it somebody's desktop or within the company's OneDrive and other places. So while the URL crawl is helpful to a degree, I'd say it's also got, I've seen pretty limited capabilities in being able to deliver really good, what I'm gonna call RAG. So, which is just generally what agents use to answer questions or to get information. So then I'm going to use an example here. Got a pretty extensive knowledge base, right? If I let the agent crawl everything in that knowledge base, that agent has a lot of knowledge. I got some stuff in my knowledge base that's a little deprecated, right? Which piece of this are they really using to answer the question? Are they combining different articles together that aren't totally relevant? Are they reading some of my sales documentation, but really trying to answer a tech support question, right? This is where these things can get a little bit muddled up. So in our world, you can crawl five levels deep, right? Which is, it's a lot of content. I don't necessarily recommend that that's how you do it, because really you want to be kind of directive with the agent. And the instruction is essentially going to be, when a customer asks this kind of question, go to this place. So you want that level of knowledge targeting within the agent experience, so that the agent is asking or answering or providing information that is appropriate to the question that's being answered. So, Steve, I know you brought this up. So one of the questions I always get is, what should I price this at? And the reality is, that's up to you, right? We provide a real safe per minute price that allows you to make a whole lot of money, right? If we are comparing that to RingCentral, 100 minutes included. By the way, I took this a couple months ago, so I don't know what their website looks like today, but it probably is relatively similar here, right? So I've got a $59 a month price, which may or may not sound attractive, depending upon who you talk to. And I got 100 minutes included. On the Nextiva side, they've got 100 interactions. I don't know exactly how they define interactions, but that would indicate to me that you've got a little bit more opportunity to have, a dialogue with an agent. So for $99, you're likely to be getting, more for that than you would be with measuring 100 minutes. Also, kind of depends on how you break off your minutes, right? Is it every 6 seconds, like we see in the telecom world? Or are you getting billed for a minimum of a minute and rounding up to a minute? So all of those things are things you kind of need to consider. But I tell you, you would be if you're pricing at this level. And I think if I take RingCentral's AI receptionist, it's kind of limited in what it's doing. You can charge at that same level and make somewhere 3x, 4x your pricing, right? So there's some capacity here to really deliver far more value to the customer and be able to charge at that level or even higher. So we've been known for a while for our white label solutions, right? White label UCaaS. In the same vein, we wanted to stay white label with our AI offering here. So fully white label, you can wrap it into any other services. If you wanted to work with us on the UCaaS level, cool. If you have a PBX you sell today or have a UCaaS service you sell today, not required that you work with us in any way, shape, or form on that. We do offer pro services, so if you're trying to just kind of lean it on us to deliver a solution, we were happy to help you there. And ultimately, a lot of our partners have decided they want to do this themselves. They're going through a process of really learning, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means here in a minute. They're going through a process of learning how to build these on their own and want to do them on their own. So one of the key points here is your customers do not have to rip and replace anything. So if they've got I'm going to call it a RingCentral, and they don't like RingCentral's AI, you can sell them something that does something different, right? Offers more value, integrates into other systems, has more unique capabilities around RAG. So there is no necessity to make any kind of change out at that level. And if you're selling an on-prem PBX with subjunking, let's just say a 3CX, same, right? You just kind of layer this into your solution. And then this is designed in mind that any experience has to have an escalation to human for a variety of reasons. Simply, it could be that the tone of the conversation changes and we want that agent to recognize that and send that off to a human. Or it could be that we've reached the capacity of what that agent is able to do and it needs to go to somebody else. And in the case of like a healthcare organization, right? Somebody says, hey, I've got these symptoms, and of course, we don't want an AI to do that. So we're going to suggest that that is directed, that kind of answer about their health is directed to somebody who's more knowledgeable about answering that thing. Of course, if you do want to work with us on UCaaS, happy to talk with you about our white label or resale options there. Um, So I mentioned our AI training curriculum. Just started the first couple of those going into our knowledge base. I have two more that are around RAG and or knowledge, I guess I should say, because it's more complete than RAG. So knowledge and tools that are going to be uploaded here this week. We'll have a little bit more on prompting next week, and then we'll have some even more directive stuff relative to our platform and how um, our new uh, update will allow for configuration. Um, and then sales and marketing, I got a team of people here that are here to help and enable. Currently, we've been working with partners who decide to start working with us or existing partners on getting them set up with their own voice AI agents. So I think a lot of them have decided that the after hours agents is where they want to start, start small and get a handle on it. We're happy to help our partners get their first one or two live. Um, so for today, I would say doesn't take us very long to onboard and train somebody. It does take a little bit of playing around, understanding, playing with, I'm gonna call it some of the knobs to get the right experience for yourself. But within a couple of weeks, you can be delivering a customer solution and going live. So that this isn't a solution where you need to have a lot of, I'm gonna call it dedicated, ramp up time towards, unless you start to get into things like, oh, I don't know any, and I want that to be part of the service that we deliver, or I don't know APIs, and I have some really specific things in mind that I want to be able to deliver. And then, of course, we are a 5 9 shop, have been now for a while. So you'll see our uptime. I hate to compare this to Microsoft, who's 3 9s, significantly better than a Microsoft or some of the other players in this industry. And we do continuously update. So, like I mentioned, we're going to come out with some one-click tools in the very short, probably two weeks kind of time frame, and then have some additional updates and tools that we'll be releasing here. So the plan is we're going to try and keep this on a cadence where every couple of weeks we got some fairly significant tool updates as well as some other feature updates. Okay. I got a couple questions. What if the AI agent gets something wrong on a call? So I think it depends on what. So I'm going to break this into a couple things. Did the agent execute correctly? So within the creation of your agent, you want to have a kind of fallback if the agent doesn't get what it needs. So let's just say I'm querying a CRM and I can't find the contact, right? I want to have that kind of baked into my agent configuration. Um, if the agent is pulling grounded data, the agent is going to return grounded data. So where you see this go wrong is too much data given to the agent, and the agent is trying to make a decision as to what the particular knowledge is that they need to access, and then they're going to maybe access multiple points of knowledge to consolidate an answer. That can be a problem. But if you have good grounded information and the agent is well directed, you generally aren't going to get hallucinations or wild answers coming from a very specific place, and it's very, very directed. Um, does this replace our existing UCaaS? No, that is not going to be something we need to worry about. It's going to layer over that. It's going to work with the existing infrastructure. in the case that we've got a on-premise PBX or some other kind of UCaaS service. It's a very simple SIP authentication. Um, yeah, I mean, how long can you sell this confident? I mean, I think you can sell it confidently within a week or two, right? Uh, the actual process of understanding like what does the customer need is a couple weeks of just kind of maybe uh, understanding the particular market, the particular use case, right? And so I'm just going to use a healthcare provider. I think we all know what happens when I call a healthcare provider and I want to create an appointment. And I'm going to ask them what's available. They're going to ask me, well, I guess first they're going to ask me who I am, right? And they're going to verify who I am. Then we're going to talk schedules and they're going to tell me what's open. I'm going to, call pick one, right? Um, that that process is relatively straightforward. If you can have a process discussion with the customer, I actually think that the configuration and delivery of the agent, once you understand the full business rules or business needs, the rest is moderately difficult to do, but not super difficult. And we're always here to hold hands. Um, Financial risk to get started, none. There's per minute, right? If you don't sell any minutes, there's nothing that you're gonna end up paying. So it's a very low risk investment on your part. Um, so I got a bunch of questions. I'm gonna try and tackle those. Okay. Yeah. So how does this integrate into a PBX? Does someone need to go on site to work on the PBX? No. I'm gonna make an assumption here that your PBX is network accessible, right? And just like a device would connect, you'd really connect the same way. So it's SIP authentication. Okay, so follow-up calls for appointment confirmations or payment reminders. Um, Not yet available, soon to be available. So outbound calling is a feature enhancement, probably towards the end of July, beginning of August is when that's going to be ready. Okay. Here's a good question. In general, what type of surprise charges appear to MSPs from other vendors for the voice AI agents? So what you generally see is a lot of approaches are a la carte, right? So I choose my TTS vendor, I choose my voice vendor, I choose my STT vendor, I choose my LLM vendor. And through that process, and I'm not going to name any names here. Through that process, what happens is you've got all of these different component parts and pieces that get estimated by, call it the sellers of those things. The reality of that is, and let's just take LLM as a perfect example. So a lower cost LLM, and this is going to be true of just about any LLM. There's a token and costs of the tokens, right? How many tokens do I use per conversation, right? It's hard to estimate some of that stuff. What is my TTS cost really going to be? What is my SST cost really going to be? So I think they position this and underestimate what those component costs really are. And that's where people really find out that when you put this into production, the use of this is actually, those component parts are really driving higher usage than originally anticipated. So hopefully that answers your question. And then, yeah, so demo form or request for further conversation. Gabriella put that in there. Thank you. Yeah, if you guys want to talk in more depth, happy to talk to anybody about, starting this as a business, or if you want to get a demo of the product, we're happy to do it. Live call streaming to a WWS server for building out our own AI services. That is not really something we've got on the roadmap, and it's maybe a little bit more complicated than building out the stream, because I think there's a couple different things that really need to be considered within that framework. But it is not something that's on our roadmap. Okay. Has we got any other questions? Well, thank you, Steve. Steve complimented me for not working off script. Yeah, I can't do that anyway. Even if I tried, I can't read it. I'd look like an idiot. Guys, would love to talk with you any further. Just let us know, and either myself or any one of my team members would be happy to kind of guide you through any kind of guidance on the market and our solution in particular. But I appreciate y'all joining us today. Thank you.